This is the lecture on Greek tragedy. To understand Greek tragedy, we need to talk about the background first. So, the characteristics of a Greek tragedy, by definition, it's a dramatic and choral presentation of an action that's usually taken from myth or remote history to exhibit some religious, moral, or political significance. Some examples of some of the more famous Greek tragedies are Seven Against Thebes, Medea, Iphigenia, Oedipus, Antigone, Agamemnon. All of them involve characters and involve a choral presentation, and they talk about a myth or history. And the purpose is to present a religious, moral, or political um, significance. The story pattern is that you have a very powerful figure. This powerful figure chooses a course of action which the lesser characters and the chorus disapprove, and which costs him suffering or death, but in the end, which also makes him more noble. As more modern reference, I thought I would talk about the second Twilight movie, believe it or not. And the character of Bella, when she finds out that she is pregnant, against everyone's suggestion, she decides to go ahead and have the baby. It does cost her much suffering, and in fact, towards the end of the movie, spoiler alert, even causes her to die. But as it is a vampire movie, she comes back, and it does make her a more noble character that she went through all of this and came out on the other side. An older version of the story pattern would be Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He has come to an asylum and has been entered into there. He tries to make friends with the people who are there. He tries to get them to go beyond their boundaries. They resist at first. Certainly the doctors and nurses resist. It does cause him much suffering. And again, spoiler alert, he ends up having a lobotomy. They take out a portion of his brain. It does cause him much suffering, but in the end, he is a noble character because of it. He was able to get people to go beyond their boundaries, and in the end, we see the chief in particular who frees himself because of what McMurphy has done. The history is that the first plays were actually called dithyrambs. They're a choral poem sung by males in honor of Dionysus. Dionysus is the god of wine and the god of the vine, and they had festivals to Dionysus every year. A dithyramb is very crude or rough poem. This is Dionysus displayed up here. You can tell because he also has the vines with him. Next came a satyr play. This was developed from the dithyramb. A satyr, as you might recognize, is this mythological character. He's usually half goat and half human. He plays these pipes. He usually has horns and a pointed beard. There's group dancing in a dithyramb, and it has group dancing and dialogue with a more formal structure, and then it takes materials from myths and use them as a story. Typically in a satyr play, there's a character and then a chorus of 11 satyrs and Silenus. This is a picture of Silenus. He's the old drunken man sitting on a donkey, usually, that you will see. He's got grape leaves that adorn his head. So the character is, there's one character, but then a chorus. And the plot is either a farce, which is something that's unbelievable, or a myth parody. It makes fun of the myth. So it was very lighthearted in nature. So again, the dithyramb and the satyr play came first. Then in the 6th century BC, a playwright by the name of Thespis came around, and we know Thespis as the father of Greek drama. He was the first writer to use an actor that was separate from the chorus. He had the actor step out of the chorus and have a dialogue. So we know that plays were a religious function at the time. They served to create solemn and entertaining devotion to the gods with drama, poetry, music, dance, and the drama was part of the festivals of Dionysus, which extended over several days. And during the festival of Dionysus, they would have opening rituals and religious processions, and then three poets would present their plays, one poet each day. Those were dithyrambs and comedies. So typically, the tragedies they were written in trilogies, so that's a group of 3 plays. They were produced as tetralogies, which are 3 tragedies and 1 satyr play, the more lighthearted. So during the festival of Dionysus, Opening ceremonies on day one. On day two, one of the poets would present all of his plays, the three tragedies plus the one satyr play. The next day, the next poet would present his four plays, and the fourth day, the third poet would present his plays. Finally, on the fifth day, they would have the awards for the best poet, and they would also have their closing ceremonies. So, who were the writers of Greek tragedy? Well, first, after Thespis, came Aeschylus. Aeschylus lived from about 525 or 524 to about 455 BC. His contributions to tragedy, he is known as the father of tragedy, as opposed to Thespis, who is the father of Greek drama. Aeschylus was the father of tragedy. He invented the second actor. So now he pulled another actor away from the chorus. You have two people who are able to have a dialogue. He also toned down the more dominant role of the chorus. The chorus was what was usually leading the entire play. Now the two actors played the most powerful roles, and the chorus was there to supplement them. His plays dealt with very abstract problems. His characters often symbolized philosophical principles, so it was a higher meaning to his plays. Next came Sophocles. He lived from about 496 to about 406 BC. And as far as his contributions, he added the third actor. So now you could have more involved conflict, perhaps, with three actors. He enlarged the chorus from 12 people to 15. He introduced painted scenery into the plays, which they did not have before. And he revised the tetralogy so that all four of the plays did not have to cover the same subject. Now, Sophocles is the person who wrote Oedipus that we're reading this year, and Antigone, and Oedipus at Colonus, all of those plays among many others. So, about the characteristics of Sophocles' plays. He was very conservative in politics and religion, and he pictures man as he should be, at this very high heroic level. And the plays were all concerned with a strong individual versus fate. Here on the left-hand side, we have a picture of, that's right, King Arthur and Modred fighting each other. A very strong individual King Arthur is, and he was trying to escape his fate by killing Modred many times. And this is a final example showing that he is not able to do that. We also have the figures of Romeo and Juliet. Both very strong individuals, willing to go against their family's wishes, but yet dealing with their fate about being star-crossed lovers. Finally, we have Euripides, who lived from about 484 to 406 BC, so he lived during the same time as Sophocles did. He was actually the most influential on future generations. The characteristics of his plays was that he pictured man as he is. This is the normal human being, this is how he is, and this is how we're going to look at him. He was also very critical of conventional morality. So, the structure of a Greek tragedy. There were no intermissions or breaks in action. The play went from the beginning to the end with no breaks. The very first section is called the prologue. That's the opening scene, and it establishes the background of the story. It's usually a single actor or perhaps a dialogue between two actors. After the prologue comes the parados. This is the entrance of the chorus. The chorus comes onto the stage, they go to the orchestra area, and they chant a lyric, which is a song, that's related to the main theme of the play. After the parados, we go through a series of episodes and stasimons. The episode is like a modern-day act or scene. The plot is developed through action and dialogue, and then the stasimon is a choral ode or a song at the end of each episode, and it alternates with the episodes. So that shows the break in the action. It allows for the main actors to go off stage, either change costume, change masks, come back in and start again. And the stasimon is the time for the chorus to be able to perform. Finally, at the very end of the play, we have the exodus, and that's the final action after the last stasimon. It ends with the ceremonial exit of all the players. So as you see, at no time is the stage empty. Only when the stage is completely empty of any people, that's when you know that the play is over. Now, characteristics of Greek tragedies. We want to talk about this term catharsis. Catharsis is when pity and fear are aroused in the audience from witnessing the tragedy. And these emotions are so intense that they're purged from the audience, and the audience leaves feeling cleansed of these emotions. Now, for example, let's take two movies. One, Schindler's List. For those of you who have seen Schindler's List, you know it's a very emotional movie. You go through many emotions, and by the end of the movie, you have this feeling in you which is so strong, and then an event happens that purges the emotion. It gets rid of the emotion, whether that means that you have cried or whether that means that you have sighed and moved on. But there's something that happens in the play that causes this feeling. And then afterwards, you leave feeling cleansed of the emotions. That doesn't mean you feel wonderful at the end of the movie, but it does mean that you've gone through this cathartic event. Another example would be Bambi. And for those of you who have seen Bambi, you will know that at some point along towards the end, there's the fire. There is before the fire, Bambi's mother is killed by hunters, and that usually presents a very strong emotion in people. But by the end, people leave feeling okay because we know that Bambi has survived and he has gone on to grow up into an adult deer. So next we have a tragic hero. A tragic hero is a great man who, through some flaw or defect in an otherwise noble character, brings about his own destruction. So he's a good guy. He does good things. He has very noble qualities, but he has a flaw in his character, some defect in his character. And that flaw is going to bring about his own destruction. In the story of King Arthur has some flaws. Lancelot has some flaws. We see that those flaws will bring about those characters' own destruction. And then the term hamartia. Hamartia means the hero's tragic flaw. That's defining what that flaw actually is. Finally, dramatic irony. The audience already knows the story in these cases. It's based on a myth, it's based on a history. The audience knows the story. There's no suspense about what is going to happen. The only suspense is about how it's going to happen. How will the playwright reveal all of the things that happen? It's very similar to the story of the Titanic. We know that ship is going to sink. So there's no suspense about that. It's only about how James Cameron directed the film. What plot, what things does he have in the background? What are we going to see? How is that going to take place? Now, Greek tragedies are different from modern day dramas in that they were religious. They were not commercial. Today we go to see the movies because it's a commercial, it is a commercial industry. Back then it was religious. In the ancient times, there was emphasis on plot and action rather than on character. We wanted to see what the story happened, but then more modern had a more interest in exploring the psychological insights of the character. All free citizens went to these plays. It was a religious and a civic responsibility for them to do so. And that ends our lecture on the Greek tragedy.